It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Hi, neighbor. Do you know how special you are? That's why genealogy is important, to let you know just that. You're very special. And thank goodness for Genealogy Gems podcast. That's a new addition to the neighborhood. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast. It's a show filled with family history, research, strategies and techniques, news and entertainment, and inspiration. And I'm your host, Louise Cooke. Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 171. I have been on a bit of a tour of my new home state of Texas over the last couple of weeks, everywhere from San Antonio and the Federation of Genealogical Societies Conference, up to Tyler, Texas, where we did the Google Earth game show on a Friday night and an all-day seminar on Saturday. You know, it's such a nice change to get to jump in the car rather than on a plane to get to speaking engagements because I get to see so much more of the country. And there are so many cute little antique shops everywhere, but I don't have a lot of time to stop. So what I ended up doing was kind of filling up my smartphone Evernote app with pictures of these shops and notes about which freeway exit numbers they were so I could go back and visit again. Because I think I've mentioned to you before here on the podcast that I kind of have a thing for old mason jars. I collect old mason jars, especially those light blue ones. And old canning books, the booklets that they would put out each year, you know, Ball and Kerr would put out canning books, and of course anything else that catches my eye. So I've been having a lot of fun. I need to schedule more time when I'm going to go out and go to a seminar or a presentation just so I can stop along the way. That would be fun. I'm home for a week before I head back out on the road. So the next stop is Naperville, Illinois, and the Fox Valley Genealogical Society. And I will be presenting there a full-day seminar. It's on Saturday, September 27th, 2014. And the following week, I will be at the Pima County Genealogical Society in Tucson, Arizona. And then in October, we are off to the Heritage Quest Library in Sumner, Washington. This is my second time up there to give a full-day seminar, and I really look forward to seeing all those folks. Well, and I think you should probably know, we lived up there for many, many years. I was raised up in Washington, and my kids were all born up there, so we're even going to get a chance to see some family and friends. Bill's mother has taken ill. She's well into her 80s and hasn't been doing that well lately. So actually this is working out to be really good timing to get a chance to go up there and definitely spend some time with family as well as with the folks at Heritage Quest. We're looking forward to that. And if you want to perhaps join me at one of the upcoming events, head on over to the website, genealogygems.com, and you can hover your mouse over seminar and click on Lisa's schedule. And there you will find my schedule of all my upcoming live presentations. And it's always fun to meet you guys on the road. I look forward to that. Now, do you ever feel like you have enough time to work on your family history the way that you would really like to? How about taking on somebody else's family history? My guess is that not too many of you out there listening really ever feel like there's enough time. Well, in this episode, I've invited storyteller Ron Plouffe of the Griddle Cake podcast to join me, who has sort of jumped over his own family history and is diligently working on A Perfect Strangers. Or did he jump over it? It's a very interesting story, and that is coming up a little bit later in the podcast. We'll also be talking later about coping and, in fact, excelling in the face of technological change. Have you noticed that things keep changing when it comes to technology? It does. I know. We're going to talk about that. But first, I have one change I want to tell you about right now, and that is that we have a new, easier way for you to get exactly the content that you want on the Genealogy Gems website. So we've added a new feature. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of the Genealogy Gems homepage, and it's called Select Content by Topic. So now, finding the content that you want, whether it's a podcast episode, a blog article, or a video, it's as simple as selecting the topic from the drop-down menu. So, for example, if you are looking to learn more about DNA, then you would select DNA in the list. Or if you're new to family history, click on Beginner, and you'll get lots of great content to get you started really quick. You can also access our complete archives of blog articles in the area. It's called Blog Archive by Date. That's a drop-down list as well, and it's just below the topics. So we're trying really hard to make the website something that you can turn to every day, not only for the latest in genealogy, but for the topics and the content that you need when you need it. That's our goal. So if you ever have any suggestions, do drop me a line at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com, and we will definitely take a look, because we definitely want to make this website your website. Also new to the Genealogy Gems website has been some new items in the store, including some exclusive genealogy research quick sheet bundles you may have noticed. And we also have a beautiful line of customizable jewelry. These are perfect for showing off your family history. You can select from rings, pendants, there's even a charm bracelet. And the amazing thing is each one is customizable with family photos. And that really makes them true heirlooms, something that you'd be proud to give to somebody as a gift and certainly hand down. In fact, Marlene was so excited about how her customized jewelry turned out that she called in to tell us about it.
Hi, Lisa. This is Marlene. You are a genius. I just received my bracelet from Lisa Lasan. I did a generation picture of my mother and 4 mothers going back to my 3rd great-grandmother. It is beautiful and sacred. Thank you for hooking me up to this website. I am thrilled. You really care about me and my needs. Thanks, Marlene.
You can find the jewelry created by Esther's Place at genealogygems.com and click the store button in the menu. You're going to be amazed how quickly they will create your jewelry and really how affordable it can be. I've got them working on a bracelet right now, as a matter of fact, and it features the women in my family tree. So I'm excited to get that. And finally, I want to tell you about kind of an interesting infographic that we reported on recently in the Genealogy Gems blog. It's called Silver Surfers, Internet Use by Older Adults. And they had some pretty interesting statistics about how things are changing in the area of technology, and that older adults are really embracing the internet. Here's some of the stats they mention here. In 2012, baby boomers aged 47 to 65 spend an average of 27 hours a week on the internet. And of the seniors that are online, 1 in 3 are using social media. And that's a big change from just back in 2009, when only 13% of seniors online were using social media. And of course, social media encompasses everything from Facebook to Twitter to Pinterest to Instagram. In fact, 1 in 5 Twitter users are over the age of 50, which caught me kind of by surprise. And 49% of online seniors have a Facebook account. But of course, I think I mention that all the time in my presentations, that, you know, they say the top growing demographic at Facebook are 45 to 65-year-old women, because we all like to share the grandbabies pictures, right? So, and it's certainly genealogists are all congregating over there at Facebook. And seniors aren't just socializing, they are shopping too. 59% of seniors online have made a purchase online in the last 3 months. So since I know I have people of all ages out there listening, and many of you are in fact seniors, I headed to the Genealogy Gems Facebook page after I posted that blog to ask what you had to say about being a silver surfer. Sherry posted over there on the Genealogy Gems podcast timeline on Facebook. She says, Lisa, my sister and I met you at Roots Tech this year. We're already planning next year's trip. I read the article about silver surfers and just wanted to say that when I was a kid in Fairbanks, Alaska, we had party line phones and one TV station. My mother wrote letters to her family in Idaho regularly, and long-distance phone calls were very rare. I'm a baby boomer and have always been interested in technology. I do most research online with Ancestry, Fold3, Family Search, etc. I haven't jumped into the blogging pool, but who knows? I'm currently starting to work on suggestions from your Google Earth CDs, putting together family history tours. Love your podcasts. You are my favorite source, she says in quotation marks. And Diane posted, thanks for the article about the Silver Surfers. I saw you when you spoke to the San Diego Genealogical Society, and I learned a lot. I'm a major social media user. I am on many Facebook groups and use Twitter, Pinterest, and have my own genealogy blog. I'm a baby boomer. Party lines were in use when I was a kid, and for parts of my growing up, our household didn't even have a phone. And her blog, you can visit Diane at, is at MichiganFamilyTrails.com. And I love that, Diane. I'm sure that many kids would have no idea what a party line even was. Of course, unless they watched old reruns of the Andy Griffith Show. Remember that?
Now, Mr. Tucker, why don't you just come on home with me before you get in any more trouble?
By the way, I am entitled to make one phone call under the law, am I not?
You're not under arrest. You can make all the phone calls you want. They won't do you any good, though. See, the Mendelbright sisters visit by phone every Sunday afternoon. Everybody knows about Maud and Cora, and they let them use the phone for a good 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Well, Maud lives here, and Cora lives in Mount Pilot, and they're in their 80s, and it's kind of hard for them to get about. Now, come on home with me, Mr. Tucker. Come on.
No mechanics, one gas station open, people allowed to use the phone all day long. I've been in towns in my time, but this beats them all.
So first my right foot started tingling, and then my left foot began tingling. Oh, I've had that. You know what it is? No. Would you like to know? You like to tell me? Your foot's asleep. That's what I said.
I told you.
This is ridiculous, wasting valuable time on drivel, talking about people's feet falling asleep.
That's probably Maud.
Cora, too. I wonder what causes that.
No.
I have that every now and then. Maybe I ought to go see their doctor.
No.
Candace also wrote in about that. She says, when I was young, we had a party line with 8 families. We weren't supposed to listen in to other conversations, but we all knew which ring indicated the best news. And Sandy says, when I was a kid, we communicated mostly by letter, which soon fell by the wayside because they took so long to write, were full of scribble-outs and add-ins, and had a long turnaround time. Phone calls were for really important stuff and emergencies. When I went to college, my parents gave me a tape recorder and several reels of tape so I could send oral letters home, which I don't think I ever did. My dad read the Dick Tracy comic strip and said that someday we would really have wrist-worn telephones and would be able to see each other as well as talk. In spite of all the complaints about constant contact via cell phones and text messages and emails, modern-day communication seems to foster friendships. Wow, your dad was quite a visionary. I mean, Apple just announced their wristwatch phone. And, of course, we all use FaceTime now, so we can see each other and talk. So that's incredible. That's great. And finally, Lynn says, you asked about seniors and net usage. I mostly use email and delight in being able to stay in touch on a daily basis with my 94-year-old cousin in Michigan. She's the only person in her assisted living facility with a computer. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Gosh, Lynn, she's pretty techie for 94. You know, what a great example of technology being used to remove isolation for people and to strengthen bonds, I think, in families. We all look down at our phones more, but I find we're all actually communicating generally more because it's easier. Hey, thanks to all of you for sharing. And we're going to be doing a little bit more sharing, and that's coming up in the mailbox.
You mean the daughter who went north to college? No, Maud. She went west. The one with her father's nose. Oh, of course. Moosey. What about her? Her feet fell asleep, too.
to me. A public utility being tied up like this. You people are living in another world.
Easy, Mr. Tucker.
This is the 20th century, don't you realize that? The whole world is living in a desperate space age. Men are orbiting the Earth. International television has been developed. And here, a whole town is standing still because two old women's feet fall asleep.
I wonder what causes that.
Oh.
No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. There's a church in the valley by the wildwood, no lovelier spot in the vale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale.
Bring me a letter from my old hometown, one with some jokes from my old pal Jim Brown. Bring me a letter from that girl of mine, saying that he's longing for me all the time. Bring me a letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
Okay, well, I love getting all of your emails, and I have a couple of them here for you. Natalie in Texas wrote, she says, I attended your 3 classes at the Houston Genealogical Forum, and I really enjoyed them as I do all of your classes. We've also met a couple of times before at other conferences. I've done a lot of work already on newspapers for about 20 years with interlibrary loan and traveling to libraries and newspaper offices out of town. My small town newspapers so far have hardly shown up online, but slowly that is changing. So when I finished your class, I used some of your Google search tips on some newspaper websites. Some things worked, others didn't, but one thing I'm glad you mentioned was not to overlook if a hit comes up on a newer date. I went to the Old Fulton Postcards website, and he mainly has New York newspapers on his site, but he also has the Rogers View Review from Rogersville, Tennessee. So I found several hits on that site, but the one I wanted to tell you about was that I was looking for my third great-grandfather, Williamson Tucker, and there were a few hits, but one was in 1995 and the other was in 2001. So I clicked on the 1995 article, and it was a picture of New Hope Baptist Church. And the first two sentences said, New Hope Missionary Baptist Church was established in 1833. It was given in a land grant by Williamson Tucker in memory of William C. Bailey. Then the 2001 issue, which was listing for Hawkins County churches and had New Hope on it, and it gave a little more information that William Bailey gave land to the church but never made a deed for it. He then died, and then my ancestor Williamson Tucker acquired the land from the Baileys and then deeded it to the church. Wow, I did not know that, and I probably would have skipped over those two hits because they were so late dated. So thank you for the tip. I've been writing a paper on my grandfather, the Reverend Ellis Burl McLean, who was a Methodist minister who lived in many places, and so far I've found him in 15 different newspapers in 6 states. So I really do know the importance of searching newspapers. Once again, welcome to Texas, and I'm sure I'll see you at more conferences. Oh, that's wonderful news. Awesome, Natalie. And yes, thank you very much. I love it here. Linda, who lives a bit of ways from Texas, she's in South Australia. She writes, I just read your advice on dealing with the chaos, a problem that has been tormenting me for ages. And a very bright light went on in my head when I read your suggestion for using Evernote to store things for future research. I use Microsoft OneNote to store some of my loose bits of genealogy information, but I haven't organized them well. I'll use your tip, the simple idea of having a future research section for each family makes me feel better already. The harder part will be putting something in there, leaving it for later, and then going back to what I was looking for in the first place. I'm easily distracted. Aren't we all? Especially when someone I'm not looking for turns out to be more interesting than the one I am looking for. I haven't used family group sheets before, but I do think they might be just the thing for seeing where the blanks are and being motivated to fill them in. Oh, yes, I would highly recommend using the family group sheets. And Dell in California has been very busy using Google Earth, which, as I said, I just did the Google Earth game show over in Tyler, Texas, and of course we have that free 1-hour class on the website. Even if you're not a premium member, you can take advantage of sitting in on my 1-hour Google Earth for genealogy class. It's under the video tab at genealogygems.com. Well, Dell writes, I finally got around to watching the Google Earth video CD that I purchased from you last January when you were here. I've been doing the map overlays, which is really a neat feature. I noted in your video that you said you had trouble emailing from a PC. I have sent 3 and had no problem at all. I have a PC with Windows 8. I used Email Placemart to send the maps. And he's right. Back when I first did record those, there was kind of a bug in there and it wasn't always working right in Google Earth. But I have noticed as well that the email feature works in Google Earth with the newest version update. So that's wonderful. He goes on to say, it served a practical use as I have a plat map of the whole of Bent County, Colorado, upon which I have marked all the locations where we own mineral rights passed down from my grandfather. I could then use the transparency feature to compare the holdings with the actual topography. I also have overlaid plat maps of various ancestors who had original land patents in Indiana, Colorado, and Ohio. A couple of the ancestors donated land for cemeteries, which I have visited and are visible on Google Earth and marked on the overlay maps. Fun stuff. I've heard your presentation previously at Jamboree on Google Earth, but would not have been able to actually make it work without the CD. Well, I love hearing what people are doing using Google Earth for genealogy because, as I say, I think that the possibilities are limitless. It's perfect because, of course, genealogy is all about location, location, location. So if you want to check out those CDs that Dell's talking about, you'll find them in the genealogy store. There are 2 volumes, 1 and 2, and they actually kind of go together. They're made as a companion to the Genealogist Google Toolbox book, and those are available as a bundle in the store. All right. Well, thank you all so much for writing in. I do love hearing from you. Keep the emails coming. You can send them to genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. And of course, I do hope that you have signed up for the free newsletter, because that's a wonderful way to stay in touch. And it's an easy way to forward information to friends and family, people where you see an article and you think, that's what that person was looking for, and you could forward it right to them. And of course, it does keep you up to date on everything that we're doing here at Genealogy Gems. So if you haven't signed up for the free newsletter yet, comes out every Thursday. Head to genealogygems.com, sign up in the center column there, and be on a lookout for the first email that you get. If you don't see it within the week, go in and check your spam folder. Make sure that you've added our email address to your contacts. And you can always email me if you have a question about it. But in that first email, you get a free downloadable ebook. Those 5 great Google search strategies for family historians. It's a 20-page ebook, and it's free and our thank you gift to you for signing up and keeping in touch. All right, well, coming up after this, we are going to sit down with Ron Plouffe and explore this story of why in the world he is researching the family history of a complete stranger.
From my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I'll bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
Our sponsor for this episode is MyHeritage. Now, I know that you tune in to the Genealogy Gems podcast because you know that I'm going to carefully vet the products that come across my desk. And I'm only going to bring to this show the ones that I really think are the real gems. Well, MyHeritage.com is in that category, and I couldn't be happier that they've signed on to support and sponsor this free podcast. I've spent the last several months really digging into MyHeritage, and I found some powerful tools that I think you really need in your genealogy tool belt. First of all, they have over 70 million members worldwide. If you're serious about making connections in the country where your ancestors once lived, hands down, MyHeritage is the place that you want to be. Get your tree posted on their website and start to see the magic as they automatically match it up with other trees. Not just with genealogists in the country where you live, but genealogists around the world. Then there's MyHeritage's unique and powerful search system. It's called Record Matches. It constantly calls 5 billion historical records for your family. It's the only family history interface out there using semantic analysis to search newspaper articles, books, and other free text documents. It's also the first to translate names between languages. And I personally like that the matches from the historical newspaper collection at MyHeritage, they show up towards the top of the results list. So visit myheritage.com. It's free to get started, so there's really no reason to wait, and there are billions of reasons to try it out. Visit myheritage.com. We're all working on our own family tree, but have you ever considered working on someone else's? Someone that you've never met and you don't know their descendants? Well, storyteller Ron Plouffe is here to share how and why he took on such an endeavor and some of his successes and challenges along the way, which he is documenting on his new website. It's called Project Lizzie. You find it at projectlizzie.com. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thanks, Lisa. I've been looking forward to this all week.
I appreciate you getting in touch with me and letting me know about your website. It's certainly something that I haven't really seen before, and I want to introduce it to our listeners and kind of bring them into your world a little bit as to what you're doing here. But let's start by going back. We'll go way back in the time machine to 1976. Okay, you're 13 years old. You're with your uncle, who just bought a house in Massachusetts, and you're exploring, as many 13-year-old boys do. And you find something very intriguing in the attic of that house. Tell us what that was.
Well, what I found was this, it was an open top box, and in the box it had a bunch of stuff. And so what I did is I pulled it downstairs, and we started going through it. And the most interesting thing that I found in there was a stack of old postcards that were dated between 1904 and 1925.
Probably something that, one, you hadn't expected, and two, you don't run across every day. Why didn't the 13-year-old boy just pass that on by and go on to the next thing and hopefully find a model airplane or something?
I don't know. I mean, I've always been interested in old documents. So, growing up in that part of Massachusetts where the Battle of Lexington and Concord happened and things like that, I've always had an appreciation for history. And what I was looking at was really snapshots from history.
Interesting. Now, I'm guessing these are old postcards. So what, they've got the old, lithographs and drawings and photographs. What kind of postcards are we talking about?
Well, the postcards from that time are really interesting. It's kind of funny. We think back of the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s when postcards sort of became like these little joke things, right? With, Omaha written on it in big letters and things like that and kind of silly photographs. But back then they were like documents and almost art. They would take pictures of the scenes of the day. And so you would see like a scene from Broadway in New York City, but there are like horse-drawn carriages and people with top hats on and things like that. And or from the Boston Common, you see these women with these long dresses, or like from like Revere Beach, where I don't know when we had so many clothes on at the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all these kind of slices of life pictures from back then, and also at that time they were hand colored, so that they couldn't print in color back then, and so they had to come up with ways of hand coloring them. So some are in black and white, but a lot of them are in color.
So I would think, on the one hand, these postcards really offer an ongoing history of maybe the Northeast, but then they're also, when you flip them over, they're providing a bit of history about a particular person. I imagine that's Lizzie. Tell us about Lizzie.
That is Lizzie. So of the stack of postcards, 99 of them had addresses written on them. And 86 of those cards were addressed to a Mrs. Elizabeth Milligan. And so as I was going through these and I was looking at all of the different people, friends, family, actually even her son, who addresses her as mother, wrote her these postcards. And as I was looking at those, I started wondering, like, this is interesting. Who is this woman?
Yeah. Now, obviously, she's not really related to your uncle because he's purchased this home. What was the connection there? Well, how did Lizzie's materials end up getting into the house? Did she own the house?
No, she didn't. So it took a little while to figure out my connection to Lizzie. But what I found out was that my uncle purchased a house from Lizzie's great niece.
Okay, so that's why the postcards end up in the attic. Now, you've hung on to these for 38 years, as you have said, and I assume, you've kept them in a box. And what prompted you to pull them back out and then have it take off into this whole investigation?
Well, I have had them in a desk drawer for all of that time, and I'd periodically pull them out and look at the pictures on the front. But when I flipped them over to the back and started looking through, I started saying, there's a story here. And you introduced me as a storyteller. I love telling stories. And so that's when I said, there is a story here. I've always known I was going to do something with the cards, but it wasn't until I looked at the back of them as opposed to the front that I figured out exactly what I was going to do.
So this led into, obviously, a research process. And here you are researching somebody that you aren't even related to. And did that pose particular challenges for you in terms of you're not starting from this known person that you maybe loved and cared about, but you're starting with a complete stranger.
Yeah, well, not only am I starting from a complete stranger, but I'm a neophyte in terms of ancestry research. And it's funny, a lot of people laugh because I actually know more about Lizzie's family tree than I do my own. So that's another kind of odd thing. But yeah, essentially you're starting I'm starting with a little bit more than nothing, right? It's not like I just found a name and started researching it. I do have her cards, and her cards give me some context around by which I find the information. And so let's say that I find an Elizabeth Milligan, and but I'm not sure it's her. Well, maybe it starts to line up with a census address. And I say, aha, the address on the card is the same as the address that I'm finding in the census. So you sort of bootstrap yourself up. And what I've been doing is every piece of information always opens up a couple more questions. And I have a list of questions, and every now and then I find another answer to one of those questions.
Yeah, and you've been documenting this at projectlizzie.com. And tell us a little bit about the website, what you're trying to do there, and kind of what people will find when they visit.
Sure. One of the things I was hoping to do was if I could build up an audience and have them, if they get interested, who knows, maybe they'd want to help. So what I did was, if you go to projectlizzie.com, and that's Lizzie at the end, a lot of people will spell it with a Y, but it's IE, that I have the gallery. And so you'll be able to look at all of the postcards. You'll see the date, and you'll be able to look at the front and the back. So you can see all of the essentially analog data. I've also transcribed all of the things that I could read, because some of the handwriting can be difficult to read. And that's in there too. So you can search and you can find different things. Then I'm telling the story as I learn it. So, if you just want to be a person to just enjoy the site and the story that I'm uncovering, then you can do that. You can do it that way. Or you can say, hey, Ron, I'd like to be able to help. I've had a couple of people help me with handwriting recognition. Like I'll say, I can't read these words on the cards. Would you mind leaving me a comment and telling me what you think they are? Or I'm also hoping, and this hasn't happened yet, but I'm hoping that maybe someone who has a lot of experience in an area might be able to help. One of the things is a picture of it's a postcard in Villefranche, and you can see there are some old battleships in there, and I think it might have been like the American fleet, but I'm not sure. And so if you look at the dates, that's when the Great White Fleet was going around the world. Is that the Great White Fleet? So there's context around the cards that I'm just opening it up to the audience to see if, you know what, maybe they'd like to participate and help me tell the story.
Sure. I mean, the cards are beautiful just in themselves to visit. And if you like a mystery, then certainly you can get involved that way. Now, as folks listen to and read about the story of your work on Project Lizzie, I'm sure that they can't help but ask themselves, why is Ron doing this? Now, I have my own theory on this, just from what little investigative work I've done, but how would you answer that question? Why have you devoted so much time and even a website to this research?
I truly love a good story. I'm a firm believer that ordinary people live extraordinary lives, and that the more I learned about Lizzie and her circumstances, the more I felt close to her. Actually, I actually mentioned once, I think I have a little crush on Lizzie. Whenever I go off to do a little research, my wife will even say, "Oh, are you spending time with your mistress tonight?" So just to find out, look, we are all humans. We're all connected. And it doesn't matter whether we're living 100 years from now. People still had the same problems. Yeah, we have different technologies, but people, they had to live with life and death and wars and things like that. And so just, to me, telling the story, the human condition, with separated by 100 years, I find that interesting. Maybe it's a little weird, but I find it interesting.
Yeah. No, I do think it's interesting. So you want my theory?
All right, please.
Well, the more I kind of read it, about what you were doing, and I've listened to you tell the story on your Griddle Cakes podcast, which Ron does, the Griddle Cakes podcast. It hit me, I think you are researching your own family history. And you know why I think that? Because I think that these cards are the connection to your uncle and to you as a 13-year-old boy. And I couldn't help but, as I heard you tell the story on your podcast about the discovery, you went into some great detail. And part of that is a very skilled storyteller. But part of that is somebody with some very strong feelings about his childhood and this kind of eccentric uncle.
You definitely hit the nail on the head there. I never thought about it that way before, but absolutely. My Uncle Fred, the guy that bought the house, and I had a very close relationship with him, and that he gave me these cards. So I never thought about it before, but you're right. I am connected to him through these cards.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I kind of brought that up was because so often many people I know who are listening to this interview right now are thinking, oh, I've had relatives come up to me and I try to tell them about the family history and they're related to the people I'm trying to tell them about, and they're still looking at me like, why should I care? And that is really the eternal question for the genealogist and the family historian is, why should we care? Why do we care? And I just thought it was interesting. If we really understand what's driving us, what's the true passion behind the family history, I think it makes it even easier to tell the story and to enlist the help of other people. Because oftentimes when we get approached or we're trying to talk to somebody, we get all into the details. And that's boring. And you know that because you're an excellent storyteller. And while you do include details, you always include the heart part of it. And I would be interested in your opinion as a storyteller. How could a family historian do a better job of telling stories in an effective and powerful way to non-genealogists and their family to hopefully draw them in a little bit? Maybe not turn them into a genealogist, but at least get them invested in the story, because you're trying to get your readers to get invested in your story.
Definitely. Probably the first piece of advice I'd give is, save the names and dates for history class.
Yeah. Because
the real important parts of life are what happens in between those dates. And so we can look at names and dates, and we can, so this person was married on this date and they moved here on that date and things like that. But if you start to now take a step back and say, yeah, but what does that mean in context? What is happening? This Saturday was the 100th anniversary of the beginning of World War I.
Right.
And I didn't see much hoopla about it, but it was a big deal. Right? 20 million people killed, 16 million wounded. And so, like with Lizzie, I'm putting this into context. I mean, she read this in the paper. I can see that her nephews had to register for the draft. And so a story comes out of, did that really bother her as an aunt? Yeah, it would. Right? And I think if you put into context what was happening, now talk about the people who were actually there. One of the things that I find out is that if you ask someone, and I used to love sitting at the knees of my grandparents and asking them questions, but if you ask them good questions, if you give them an open-ended question like, whoa, what was it like back in the roaring 20s? They probably don't have an answer for you. But if you actually ask them a question saying, I saw that people dressed a certain way. Why did you do that? If you ask something that's open-ended but very, very specific, then you can start to draw stories out of people. So those are two of the quick hints that I would give.
Yeah, I think those are great. That why, that reasoning behind it versus the what. We can all look at the what, but it was, as you say, what's the motivation behind it? In looking back, and I think you draw a great line here back to the World War I. And I think the challenge for Americans is for us, we don't really always think of 1914. it was the beginning, but that wasn't, in a sense, our beginning.
Right.
Perhaps, maybe it should have been, but it wasn't. And so I think we're a little slow on the uptake. I think as we get into, like you say, 2017, 2018, we're all going to be kind of in the heat of the moment, which we were 100 years ago. But I love that idea that here you've got somebody writing fairly kind of mundane everyday events on backs of cards, and you just know that it's wrapped in the heat of the times that she was living in. Before I let you go, and again, I invite everybody listening to go check out Project Lizzie, LIZZIE.com, to look at the cards, maybe help Ron on his quest to put some flesh back on these bones. But Ron, I'm curious, I should ask, is Uncle Fred still alive?
No, we lost him about 4 years ago.
So did he know that you were going to take on this project? And if he didn't, what do you think he would think of it now?
Oh, he'd love it. No, he really would love it. He gave the cards to me because he knew I would do something with them. And we even talked about them periodically. He said, "You still have those cards? Like, don't throw them away." And of course I never would. And it's actually probably because of his death is one of the reasons why I said, I did make a promise to do something with these cards. So, that, I don't know, you're making me think about something.
Well, thank you. This has been the Dr. Lisa Show. No. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, for sharing your story and for sharing your labor of love. Because I think that's what it really is.
Oh, it is.
And what a kind of a neat way to give back. And I do have to stop and ask really quick before I let you go. And I just thought of this because I remember, my husband went to a garage sale one day and he came back with this box of photos and mostly negatives from World War II. And we lived in the, kind of near what was the Richmond shipyards. My grandmother had worked at the Richmond shipyards during World War II. And, so he knew I'd be really interested. And he was, of course, married to a genealogist. He knows, oh my gosh, you can't just walk past a big box of negatives. And I'm looking through this. Well, long story short, in tracking down the descendants today, she was like, good riddance. I tossed him for a reason. Have you run into anything like that with this particular project?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't found anything like that. As a matter of fact, there is a whole side story with this is actually reaching out and actually talking to family members has been interesting and challenging, right? I keep coming back to, you call a blog cousin bait. I haven't seen that yet, I'm hoping that I do. But right now, it's sort of like, how do I convince people that I have good intentions and I'm not like some creepy old guy who's trying to get something from them?
Right.
And so the only kind of, it's not negative, it's probably real, but trying to reach out to existing family members and having them not trust that really I'm trying to tell the story of Lizzie with these, and I'm not trying to get anything from them. So that would be the only thing that I've found that has been a challenge. It makes my story more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and who knows, because I'm sure that Lizzie talked about friends and distant cousins and that kind of thing. You never know whose history you're actually posting on that website, whether it's direct, maybe not the direct descendants are as interested, but somebody somewhere. It's like we talk about going onto YouTube and everybody else's home movies. Our ancestors were bit players in their home movies. So who knows who the bit players are out there. Ron, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast and for sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I've got some great news for all you genealogists out there. Roots Magic 6 is now available, and it offers some of the most customer-requested features, like online publishing, the ability to search every record, not just people, an editable timeline view, which is really incredible, and new web tags, which lets you link people, sources, places, and research log items to web pages, plus dozens of other great enhancements, and of course, all the built-in features that you've come to enjoy. There is a little something here for everyone. Now, if you're already a devoted Roots Magic user like I am, or if you're looking to take the next step in your family history research and finally start recording your family tree in your own genealogy database, or if you've just been wanting to make a switch to a much more user-friendly program, there's no better time to get your copy of Roots Magic 6. Do it now. Go to rootsmagic.com and download your risk-free trial of Roots Magic 6. You'll see why professionals and beginners alike choose Roots Magic at rootsmagic.com.
Profile America, Wednesday, September 17th. On this date in 1787, the Constitutional Convention wrapped up in Philadelphia with the delegates accepting the document and sending it on to the states for ratification. Less than 2 years later, the new U.S. government had to take out a loan. This week in 1789, Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton was in negotiations to borrow nearly $192,000 from the Bank of New York and the Bank of North America. The money was needed to pay the salaries of President Washington and the members of the First Congress. The loan was obtained in February 1790 and paid off in June. Today, the president's salary is $400,000 a year, more than twice the amount of the first loan, and the debt of the 50 United States governments is around $1.15 trillion. Profile America is in its 17th year as a public service of the U.S. Census Bureau.
Thanks so much for joining me for this Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 171. And of course, as always, you can get all the information that we've talked about here on today's episode in the show notes. Head to genealogygems.com and hover your mouse over podcast, select Genealogy Gems podcast, and navigate your way to episode number 171. And for those of you who have the app, for your iPad, your Android, your Windows phone, whatever you have, you can go to the app and you'll find show notes there as well. Now, before I let you go, I want to tell you a little story. Recently, I was teaching an online class, and one of the students was stumped because the class materials said to use the advanced search on google.com, and it wasn't there. And so she stopped work and posted that she couldn't do it because the link wasn't there. And I thought, this is a perfect example that we really need to cultivate our problem-solving skills in today's constantly changing online environment. I totally get it, that it can be really frustrating to visit a familiar website or refer to something in a book or a class and find that things are not as they used to be. In this case, Google had removed the advanced search link from the web search and the image search homepages. And I've even had situations where I went in to teach an iPad class and the night before an entirely new operating system was released. And of course, that practically changed everything. However, if we come to expect change, then we won't have to be quite so surprised and frustrated when we run into it. And of course, in most cases, that change is really just an attempt by the website to improve and evolve. Although that can seem kind of debatable when it's something that you really enjoy or depend on. Well, when you run up against change, you are better equipped than most to deal with it. As genealogists, the sleuthing skills that we've honed become our greatest assets. The quickest way to determine what's going on when something changes online, which again can happen nearly every day, is to Google it. So after I read that student's message, that's exactly what I did, because I didn't have the answer on the top of my head either. So I went to google.com and I searched on Google Advanced Search no longer homepage. And the results quickly led me to the answer. As it turns out, at both the image search page and the web search page, just the basic google.com page, that advanced search had been moved to Settings. So all you had to do was click the Settings button in the bottom right-hand corner or wherever it was on that particular day, and you'll find Advanced Search there as one of the options. Well, the good news is that chances are, if we've noticed a change, of course, other people are already probably talking about it online, and often will have already shared the answer. And that's kind of why I phrased my search query the way I did. I kind of tried to put it out there the way another frustrated Googler would, post a question and hopefully get an answer on a message forum somewhere. So it was Google Advanced Search, no longer on homepage. Googling it is often the easiest way to determine what in the world's going on so that you can get on with your family history work. So until we meet here again next time, get on with your family history work. Google it. Thanks for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.
As the little brown church in the vale. There's a church in the valley by the wildwood, no lovelier spot in the vale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. No place is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church